I was getting ready for this talk and on Monday, and I'm sitting there in my comfortable home with my comfortable lap dogs and drinking my comfortable coffee and sitting in my comfortable lounging clothes in my comfortable chair. And I thought, well, geez, you're not very authentic to be talking about getting out of the comfort zone when you're enjoying it so much. But the thing is, there really is absolutely nothing wrong with being comfortable. There's really, truly nothing wrong with that. The opportunity always is to see where we can shift in our lives, or if I am so set on staying comfortable that I'm negating any kind of push or pull of the universe to do something different or to be something more or to just expand in a way that I hadn't thought of before. Comfort is a natural human need. It's one of our basic needs. We have to have rest. We have to have safety. We have to have food. We have to have surroundings that keep us feeling like we're okay in the world. When our comfort is totally disturbed, then there's a lot of other things that are working inside of us that get out of balance. I studied a lot of psychology, and one of the things we talked about was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is how our basic human structure of needs are, and comfort is in those bottom three levels. We have to have our physiological comfort. Our bodies have to feel comfortable. We have to not be in pain. We have to be able to feed ourselves. We have to have our nourishment. We have to have a safe environment to be in. We have to have a sense of belonging, a sense of love, those kind of things that are the familiar that provide that level of comfort for us. So it is absolutely necessary for our sustaining our lives, but it's not sufficient enough for evolution. Comfort provides that foundational level for growth, but clinging to growth can be a barrier for the higher levels of fulfillment that we might be seeking. And certainly for our self-realization. If we are so determined to absolutely remain comfortable, we don't give ourselves an opportunity to grow. And so the question always comes up is, at what point does our need to be comfortable become a barrier to our evolution? At what point am I so determined to just absolutely keep everything in control and to where I feel good that I'm inhibiting my growth? Our founder, Ernest, says this about it. He says, we must not be afraid to let go of the familiar, for the unfamiliar holds the possibility of our greater good. If I am so determined to keep everything the same, then I limit my possibilities for expansion in any way. Maybe there's something better. Maybe there's something better for me than being in my comfortable clothes, holding my dogs. I can't think of anything right now, but But maybe it's out there. I'm open to the possibility, I am open to the possibility that there is something better than coffee. I don't know. But I'm open to it. Our comfort zone is actually, I know I'm with my people here. Dogs and coffee. That's all I got to do is talk about dogs and coffee, and I'm good. I know, we have tea drinkers too, and that's okay. I like my tea. So what is our comfort zone? So it's that mental pattern or boundary that we have established with our ego mind. This is not higher spiritual work. This is our ego mind that likes everything to stay the same. Our ego doesn't like things to change. It will do everything possible not to change. It will stay or keep us in pain instead of changing. It will keep us in poverty instead of changing. It will keep us in hatred and fear and forms of aggression instead of opening up to something different. Because our ego doesn't like to change. We were talking about this in our class on Thursday night, about this witness that we have, this part of us. We always talk about one, that we're only one, right? There's oneness and that's it. But our brains have a dualistic nature. So have you ever been thinking thoughts and your thoughts are just going rampant and all of a sudden there's a part of you that says, why am I thinking that? What's going on here? So that part that sees that, many of the philosophers call it the witness. And then that part that is, rampantly going off on a tangent, that's our ego, or as I love the phrase that Michael Singer uses, he calls it the inner roommate, which sometimes needs to be evicted. So we have that part of our brain that's just constantly going. That's the part that likes to keep everything comfortable, everything the same, whether we're comfortable or not. It just doesn't want any change. It's the part that actually will keep us stuck, where that witness part that sees the possibility of something else is that part that will allow us to transform. I love the way that Neil Donald Walsh writes it. He says, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Comfort zones are not bad, but they're not the end of the story. This is my second year of being in my house. I just celebrated my second year there this week. Yeah, I was thrilled. So it's been a long time coming. I was thrilled to have my new home. And I was looking around, and I noticed that one of the plants that someone had given me, it was an aloe vera plant that somebody gave me as a housewarming present, was looking a little droopy. And so I looked at it, and I pulled it. It was one pot sitting in another pot. And so I pulled it out, and I realized I have this big plant, in this little tiny pot. So I decided it was time to repot it. And so I got 2 pots, nice big ones, and I was able to split the plant in 2. And I put it in the fresh soil, and I did all the watering, and I gave it some fertilizer, nutrients, and so forth. And when you know, the thing just kept getting droopier and droopier and droopier. I was thinking, have I killed this plant? It was doing so well. I mean, it was cramped in there. It didn't have any room to expand any further, but it was alive. And then I go and I take it out of its comfort zone, and I put it into something new. Well, it took a few days. It took a few days for it to adjust, and I looked at it this morning before I got ready to leave, and I thought, hey, I think this thing's going to make it. It's really looking good. Sometimes we have to repot ourselves. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we have to pull ourselves up by the roots out of that soil and plant ourselves in something fresh and new. Because we get stagnant. If I think about that poor plant, 2 years it's been in that little tiny pot. I am pretty sure that every single nutrient that was in that soil has been absorbed. I was giving it water all the time, all the water it needed. But I bet you all the nutrients were gone. Everything that they could take out of it had been used up because it wasn't growing. It wasn't able to grow. It wasn't able to expand. It wasn't able to be the fullness of itself in that tiny little container. How many times do we stick ourselves in a tiny little container and refuse to grow? Sometimes it's a relationship where the relationship is more comfortable being in it, no matter what the turmoil or distress is in that relationship, than it is to think about the possibility of being without that person, or the possibility of finding new people in our lives. Sometimes we'll stick with the familiar just because it's familiar, and change is so scary. Think about a job that you might have had. Maybe it provided what you needed at the time. You were able to make a living out of it, provide for yourself, meet your basic needs on Maslow's hierarchy. But it was killing your soul. There was no room for growth or expansion. There was no room to create or to do something outside of the box that you've been put in. So many times we wind up in situations like that where we have got to uproot ourselves and find a new place to be. Real transformation begins when comfort ends. If we are focused totally on comfort, then we don't open up ourselves to the possibility of transforming. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to be reckless. It doesn't mean that we have to get rid of every single thing that we find comfortable in our lives. But it's constantly asking that question, is there something more for me here? Is there something I can do differently? Is there something I can explore in a different way than what I ever have before? Is there a place where I can take a little bit of a risk and see what kind of rewards I might get? It's not reckless, but it is conscious and courageous steps. It is absolutely being very self-aware of where I'm feeling fear and how can I move beyond that. Consciously and courageously move beyond that. It's saying yes when you don't know what all the results are going to be to that yes. It's saying yes when the picture isn't clear, but you can feel something there. You can feel something's possible if I just take this chance. It's constantly choosing faith over fear and growth over grasping. Too often we're trying to pull things in instead of letting things out. It's comfortable to pull in the things that I know. It's a lot more than it is to step out into the unknown. You know, one of the people I love to read about is Helen Keller. Now, can you imagine this young girl who was blind and deaf? What a world that she must have been in. I can't imagine not having any more fear than she must have had for a better part of her life. Not being able to hear what's around her, not being able to see what's around her. She said this in her later years: security is mostly a superstition. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Can you imagine creating a life that you consider a daring adventure when you can't see and you can't hear? What a profound gift she gave the world. You know, comfort can trick us into thinking that we're evolving when we're actually just maintaining. When we feel like we're being safe and secure. When we're relying on comfort more than change. Comfort becomes a habitual avoidance of discomfort. Comfort becomes a habitual avoidance of discomfort. Michael Singer, in his book, The Untethered Soul, talks about having a sore on your arm. Just imagine if you had a wound on your arm. And instead of going to the doctor and getting it tended to, you decide to build a contraption around it so it doesn't get bumped. And so you build this big contraption all around your arm so your arm stays safe and comfortable. But what's happening? The wound isn't healing. We've got a false sense of comfort that we've built around it to protect it, to stay comfortable in the world. When all we have to do really is take that off and tend to it, address it, or dress it even, get it ready to be healed. But we avoid it so much. We will do everything possible to avoid that being disturbed instead of just addressing it head on. Spiritual growth requires that we disturb ourselves. Spiritual growth requires a disruption in our life. One of the things that probably stuck with me more than anything else in ministerial school is what they told us our purpose was. So they said, and I'm paraphrasing because I like this phrase better, but our purpose is to comfort those who are disturbed and to disturb those who are comfortable. We don't change, we don't grow when we are absolutely dead set on being nothing but comfortable. We have to begin to move out of that. You know, as they say, the old adage is, if we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always had. Are we willing to shift out of that? The wonderful author Florence Scoville Shin writes this: new thoughts can break old chains. When we have those new ideas, as Mortonette sang about in her song, when we have those new ways of thinking about a situation, we can break the old habits. In new thought, we don't believe that discomfort is something to be avoided. It is most often a signal for spiritual expansion. It is a signal that something is moving in us and wanting to burst out from us. Sometimes it's a mental feeling. Sometimes it's a physical feeling. Sometimes it's just, I'm just uneasy and I don't know what it is. I had one of my most profound mystical experiences when my body felt physically disturbed. I had this weird moving in and out sensation, and I couldn't function. I couldn't work. I was at my job and I couldn't work. And I couldn't go to my boss and say, hey, I got this thing going on. I'm not really sure, but I got to. He was going to look at me like, yeah, right. So I just went and sat in the silence, and I waited. And I said, I don't know what to do here, but I can't work, so I'm just going to sit here in the quiet till either it goes away or something shifts. And I had the first mystical experience when I heard Spirit speaking to me. And it said, there's only peace, there's only love. And he said, there's no pain, there's only peace, there's only love. My brother was dying at that time, and I was very stressed out about it. And I remember Spirit saying, there is no pain, there is no suffering, there's only peace. But it took a disturbance in my body for me to stop long enough to listen. Spirit was nudging all the time, like, there, wait, I got something to tell you. But I had to wait till something was so disturbed inside of me I couldn't do anything else. It would be really, really nice if Spirit just came and tapped us on the shoulder very gently and said, hey, I got something to tell you. My experience is more often a 2x4 than a tap. It's that slamming me, because I guess I'm the kind of person that has to have something really get my attention. So. But once it gets our attention, then all things open up inside of us. Florence writes it this way: the moment you step out in faith, the universe rushes to meet you. Joel Goldsmith says you take 1,000 steps towards God. No, I'm sorry. You take 1 step towards God, and God takes 1,000 steps towards you. We have to have a little opening. I had to sit down in the dark and listen. We have to have a little opening. We have to have a little place where Spirit can give us the information that it needs to give us. It'd be nice if it was always comfortable, but it doesn't seem to be that way for me. I don't know that it's been that way even historically. I mean, I think throughout centuries, a lot of these people that have gone through spiritual transformations that we know about have been very painful. John of the Cross, in his dark night of the soul, had a spiritual transformation while he was a prisoner. He had been placed in a cell that was underneath of a latrine. Now, can you imagine how uncomfortable that must have been? But he needed that for his awakening, or at least it was the catalyst for it. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes we hear the message and we just follow. We think about the great master teacher, Jesus. He said to Simon, Peter, and Andrew, come follow me. Put down your nets and come follow me, and I will make you fishermen of men. Now, according to the Bible, they just went walking with him. I don't know if it was that easy or not. But, sometimes it seems to happen when it doesn't require a lot of discomfort. When it requires more faith than anything else. Can you imagine today somebody walking up into you and saying, hey, put down your nets, put down your work, leave your house and come follow me? Can you imagine the degree of faith that would take to follow someone today like that? But when we stop fighting it, when we actually get to that point like Simon, Peter, and Andrew did, and they just said, okay. When we stop fighting the changes that are presented to us, we enter into that grace. And grace moves through us. When I had my first experience, I was like blissed out for weeks. Weeks and weeks. I felt like I was uplifted by grace. And it moved through me throughout the entire rest of the experience of my brother making his transition. I couldn't explain it to anybody else. They couldn't get that level of grace that was moving through me. But they could see something had shifted. And I think that's an opening too for us. You know, Goldsmith teaches us that the only thing we ever have to heal is a sense of separation from spirit. If we can really believe that God and I are one, imagine what's possible. I was in a class on Tuesday with Kathy Ann Lewis, who's going to be speaking here next weekend. And she gave us a Meister Eckhart quote. Now, Meister Eckhart was a 12th century mystic, Catholic priest. And he's giving a Christmas talk. So he's talking about the birth of Christ. And he says, we are all to be mothers because God is constantly birthing itself through us. We are all to be mothers because God is constantly birthing itself through us. Now, I'm sure there's quite a few people in here that have experienced birth. There's probably a few people in here that have witnessed birth. It is not a comfortable experience. So can you imagine God birthing itself through us being gentle and easy and comfortable? I imagine it's taking a lot to move itself into expression through us. If we are all to be mothers and allow God to birth itself through us, then we have to get rid of having to stay absolutely comfortable all the time. But when we can step out of the comfort zone, unbelievable possibilities are available to us. Miracles happen outside of the comfort zone. Transformation happens outside of the comfort zone. What is possible for you when you can step out beyond the comfort zone? You're probably going to experience that you are more than the history of yourself that you've thought up until now. You'll probably discover that the infinite has been waiting for you all along, just looking for that opening. The comfort zone offers predictability, but it never, ever will offer transformation. Ernest said, change your thinking, change your life. Changing your thinking starts with stepping out of that comfort zone. And so I invite you to do that as you move through this week. I invite you to listen boldly, to wait for those intuitive hits, to be attentive when they arrive, to be bold in your action, and even bolder in your faith. Moving out of the comfort zone is not easy, but it is the holiest thing we can do. All right, let's take this into prayer. I invite our practitioners to come and stand, surround us. Well, thank you. Thank you. So our form of prayer is called spiritual mind treatment. It is affirmative prayer. We recognize the presence of God. We align ourselves with it. We speak words of truth. We give thanks. And then we let it go. And so I invite you to just turn within. You'd like to lower your eyelids, take in a deep breath, relax into your chair, and just allow yourself to feel that peace that is. That peace that passeth all understanding. That peace that is at the very heart of our being. It is the truth of who we are, who we have always been. For nothing exists outside of this one power and presence, this one incomparable love intelligence that has created all, brought forth everything into existence. It is the isness and the allness and the fullness of all life. It is the beginning and the end and everything in between. And I know this one as creativity and love, as harmony and balance, as passion and purpose. I know this one is infinite possibility, and that infinite possibility resides right at the heart of my being, for I am one with that creative love intelligence. It has brought me into existence so that it can be birthed through me. And as I know this is true for me, I know this is true for each and every one of us, for we are all that place where God shows up. We are all that perfect and unique emanation of a love so powerful it could do nothing but create more and more and more. And so knowing this truth, I know that each one of us is a receptacle for that divine flow to moving itself into expression in all of our experiences. I know that each one of us is that place where God experiences earth, life, love, passion, and purpose. I know that each one of us is that perfect and unique manifestation of God. And I know that as we remember this truth, we more easily open up ourselves to be that expression of the divine. We move away from the things that are familiar and step into infinite possibility. I am so grateful to feel this. I'm so grateful to see it happening in this community right here and right now. I know that each one of us is completely blessed by that power and that presence. And so I release this word into the law, into that creative mind that always says yes, that knows no lack or limitation, and that is always unfolding itself for the highest and greatest good of all. I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, so it is.